Hey everybody, welcome to the next in the Apex interview series. I'm Tim Britton, your head of community. This basically, if you haven't seen us before, is an opportunity for our Apex competitors, our challengers, to tell their stories. This is a platform for them to explain maybe why they've taken on trying to scale the Helvellyn Peak in the Lake District 9.2 times later on this year, or maybe it's an opportunity for them as a platform to let people know about the charities that they're raising money for, because there are an awful lot of competitors that are trying to raise money for charities that are very dear to their heart. And this is an opportunity for us to try to help push that out and to let more people know about the wonderful places there are out there and the care that's being given from many other people. So without further ado, I am going to bring you in to my wonderful guest today, who is actually doing that exact thing. He is raising money for charity. It is Ant Moverley, who's going to be joining me this morning. Ant, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Tim. Doing all right for a Monday morning, thanks.
Yeah, we jumped on really quickly beforehand, saying it was nice and early on Monday morning because we tried to schedule this in a little bit later in the week, but the weeks being the weeks, they get in the way and things happen. So, but yeah, thank you so much for getting up and jumping on here first thing to see in the Apex week with me as well. So thanks for that, mate.
No problem.
Okay, so I suppose the first thing we should do is we should just kind of dive into a little bit of backstory from you and yourself and to what you've done in your experience with this, because you're not necessarily an ultra endurance athlete, but you are quite addicted to adventure.
Yes, I think that's one way of putting it, Tim. I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie ever since I was a little boy, jumping out of trees, jumping out of anything really. I think that is the big buzz for me is just jumping. I've jumped out of airplanes, I've jumped off cliffs, I've done bungee jumping, all sorts of things. But most recently, I suppose I did 3 Peaks Challenge last year, which is an ultra event. And off the back of that, I decided I wanted to do something else. And the Apex Everest popped up pretty much straight away. So I jumped on it. So yeah, looking forward to getting some training done now. Christmas is behind us and get a bit fitter and shed a few of those Christmas pounds. And
yeah. Tell me about it. This Christmas, I don't know what it has. This Christmas and into this new year, it's decided just to carry on going for me. And I've had a few friends saying, "Do you know what? February is the new January." I was like, "No, we're not dragging this out for another month. We're making sure we get
That's
going."
an excuse, that is.
But yeah, for sure. Okay, so you said you did the 3 Peaks Challenge. Did that come up from just an idea that it's something you've always kind of wanted to do, or was it you and a group of friends, or was it just you thought, you know what, I'm bored this weekend, I want something different?
Yeah, I think I just wanted a new challenge, and 3 Peaks has always been there. It's always been up on the list. I've got 2 young girls, so a lot of the last 10 sort of 15 years has been spent with them. So now I'm sort of getting my life back a little bit, and so I thought, let's jump on and get things done. I suppose getting on in years a little bit as well. I think being 50 this year, I just want to start ticking boxes of things that I've always wanted to do. So yeah, and it was an opportunity to raise some money as well.
Okay, all right. So okay, let's just put that. So I love that you're approaching 50. Someone who's in their introduction saying that they're jumping off mountains and they're bungee jumping, this, that, and the other, and riding your mountain bike up and down all these crazy trails. But you're still hunting for the new things to do. I love that, because that for me is kind of one of the key things of what Everest is like all about. It is all about doing something that you never thought might have been possible to do. So it's amazing. So what was the charity you were raising money for the 3 Peaks Challenge?
Yeah, the 3 Peaks Challenge. So I raised money for the Mind charity, mental health.
Okay. Was that for anything like particular for yourself, or was it just because it's a charity that's been kind of dear to your heart or your family or friends?
Yeah, I think I'm somebody who suffers with a bit of depression, nothing majorly serious like some poor people do. And I know what the feelings are like, of feeling that low and just feeling you can't cope anymore and you can't go on anymore. And these people are there. I have a friend who has a daughter in her teenage years who hasn't been to school really for the last 3 or 4 years because she's got severe OCD, and just seeing somebody go through that. So yeah, I think that's the nucleus for me wanting to raise money for that charity.
Yeah, and I think it's a tremendous. I commend anyone who raises money for charities, especially when it's something that they can see it's for others. When they see it's affected so many other people around them. Not like you said, it affects you a little part and you experience some of it, but it's more you see what it does for other people, and you want to kind of help into those other people, which I think is fantastic. And doing something like the 3 Peaks is no easy challenge. It's not like you just, and I don't mean this as any disrespect. A lot of people they go for the safe option of saying, I'm going to do a half marathon, or I'm going to do a marathon. I'm going to take a nice big training block, and I'm going to attack that. Whereas the 3 Peaks is one of those things that you go, all the training in the world, and if the weather doesn't want to play ball, who knows? What was it like when you were actually doing it? Was it?
Do you know, we were really lucky with the weather. Obviously you start on Nevis up in Fort William, and it was great. 6 a.m. start, straight up and down. I think the hardest part really for me was the traveling in between.
Yeah.
You're on a minibus, you're not sleeping properly. Then we were driving from Scarfell Pike. I think the second peak for me was the hardest, because I think you've just got over the first one. All of a sudden you're out the van, you're doing another one. And the first sort of couple of 100 meters of that was like, I can't do this. But, being stubborn, I pushed through it and did it. But in between Scarfell Pike and driving down to Snowdonia, the weather was horrendous, especially getting closer to Snowdon. There was lightning, thunder, rain, everything you could possibly imagine. We're like, oh my days. We're all in the minibus going, yeah, we're going to do this, But thankfully, I think we got out of the minibus about 6 a.m. or maybe even earlier, and it just stopped. And we got out and walked up there in glorious weather. So lucky.
Oh, okay. So let's move on a bit, and let's just kind of cover Apex a tiny bit, because you've signed up for the Apex Challenge and you're doing it as a solo?
Yes.
Okay, so solo competitor for the Apex Challenge. Now, you've already said that having scaled one mountain and down, and then moving to the next mountain, and the second one was quite tough. Are you aiming to try to keep going for the solid 48 hours? Are you gonna try and attain that 9.2, or are you thinking, I'm just going to start 1 foot and see how far I can go?
No, definitely. I think in my head it has to be to complete the whole 9.2 in the 48 hours. It has to be. I was going to swear then, but I won't. Hit or miss. We'll say that. Hit or miss. Yeah. Go hard or go home, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so have you started your training regime for it at all? Are you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as you mentioned, I'm in mountain biking anyway, which is a completely different discipline to hiking, but it does give you a certain level of fitness. But I'm on the doorstep of the Black Mountains here, so we spend a lot of time walking around the Brecon Beacons, Black Mountains.
Beautiful.
So that'll be my training nucleus, but hopefully I'll be getting up to Snowdon a bit as well, and up into the lakes and do a bit of training around these areas as well.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, and I think that's a big thing for a lot of our, because we've been starting to get inundated with quite a few messages now, and people asking about training routines and whether or not other types of training are good options to do. And I'm a massive advocate for cross training of different styles, because mountain biking for sure. I mean, the sheer build of quad strength, of glute strength, of hamstrings, core strength that's required for that discipline is completely transferable to something else. So I would 100% suggest to other people that they should do other types of cross training as well. And I suppose, I mean, because I know you do mountain biking is quite a big thing for you as well. So I suppose you must have felt that kind of transference of skill when you did, for example, the 3 Peaks Challenge as well.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Even when I started training a bit for the 3 Peaks, different muscles were starting to hurt and that in the legs. And you think, well, mountain biking's all legs. Surely that's going to carry me over into some hiking and that, but not necessarily.
Okay. So I know that we've spoken a little bit prior to this, and I know that you are raising money for a particular charity through the Apex Challenge, like many other of our competitors are. And I know that the charity or the place that you are trying to raise money for is really close to your heart because of a situation that you unfortunately had to go through last year. So I wondered if you wouldn't mind just telling that story of as to why you're raising money for who you are.
Yeah, sure. So unfortunately, Mum was taken ill mid-November last year, and she was diagnosed with pneumonia and a collapsed lung. So she was in hospital on the bear with me a second, on the respiratory ward in Gloucester Royal Hospital on the 8th floor. And we've been in and out of hospital with Mum, unfortunately, especially in the last 12 months. And neither of us have ever had a bad word to say about Gloucester Hospital. Everybody in there is absolutely incredible. Yeah, and they just looked after Mum so fantastically well, especially when we knew she wasn't going to be coming home. And my brother and I spent the last few days with her, and they looked after us incredibly well, as much as they did Mum. And, you know, you couldn't wish for more. And I didn't set out to do the Apex Everest to raise money for anything at all, really. It was just purely for personal gain. But spending 2 weeks in the hospital there with them guys and seeing what they do and what they need, basic things that they're trying to raise money for themselves, so they can so they can give the patients a better quality of care whilst they're there, that they shouldn't be needing to raise money for, but that's the way it is. So yeah, just want to raise some money for those guys as a thank you, really, and just hopefully it will make their lives at work a little bit more comfortable, and the patients as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing, because I mean, I know that's a hard thing to speak of, so I really appreciate that. And you know, to be so committed to making sure that you can maybe contribute to the future care of those other people that maybe have to experience that is something really worthwhile. Now, like all the other videos, if we're going to try and put links down, and we're going to try to put this up on our socials and things as well. So if you do want to donate to Ant's charity, please make sure that you do follow his pages and his Just Giving pages as well. And we'll put links to socials and things across everything. But it's always tough when we think about that. But when you think of the challenge, I suppose this is probably one of those things that might spur you on when I don't know, we're 24 hours into the challenge, it's the middle of the night, and you're trying the fifth ascent or something like that, and the voice is the cold, the wet, maybe it starts to creep up. I suppose that's going to be a real driving force to help get you up the hill. But I mean, have you ever kind of experienced like difficulty in any other things that you've done, whether it be any of your other adventures that you've done, where you've kind of had to really draw deep and go, okay, how am I going to overcome this moment of fear, or how am I going to overcome this moment of self-doubt that I can't keep going? Have you experienced that? And if so, what was your trick to kind of getting through it?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story, Tim, but unfortunately, there's no success at the end of it. I was in Slovenia quite some years ago now. I was a bit young and silly. No, I'm just old and silly. But my cousin and I decided that we wanted to go kayaking. Okay. If you've ever been to Slovenia and seen the rivers and the water out there, you'll probably think twice about it. But we walked into this adventure shop and said we want to go kayaking. And the guy's gone, you know, have you been kayaking before? We've gone, yeah, we've been kayaking loads. I've been canoeing down the River Wye, probably at best. So we jumped into these kayaks in this grade A white water, and it was pretty obvious from the word go that we were not up to this at all. But we persevered for a while, and we were upside down more than we were the right way up. And we actually, the guide actually made us get out a couple of times and walk, because he knew that the water coming ahead was just far too much for us. And eventually I tapped out and got out and carried my kayak back. So yeah, and that's the end of the story, really. It's a learning curve at best.
Well, the thing is that, I mean, the thing is, we learn from everything. Every experience that we have, we learn from. But it is that, I suppose, I'll say it, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You know, it's one of those things that you learn from a lesson and you think, okay, it was tough, it was difficult. But what I loved is that you didn't give in straight away.
Not straight away, no. There was a horror story as well. When he got us out and we were walking down the river bank, there's a huge boulder in the middle of the river with a crucifix on it. And we were like, well, why is there a crucifix there? I said, yeah, quite a few people have got stuck underneath that boulder and not come back up again.
Whoa.
Of course, once that seed is sown, it's just... And the one thing I thought would never beat me would be the water. I love the water. But yeah, and I've never been in a kayak since.
Maybe that'll be something for the future bucket list, but maybe not in quite so severe and intense water conditions.
Silly people.
Okay, so you've obviously kind of travelled many places around the world, and you've experienced an awful lot. We can tell that, and I know because you also have kind of like it's like an adventure You're like an adventure adrenaline travel like guru.
Yeah.
Booker. So people can basically, if you don't know, you can message Ant, you can find his site, and you can basically go, right, I want to experience this. I'd like a bit of this, and I like this. And he'll go, give me a minute, and he just starts working out where we can make all this magic and craziness happen. But because you've been around the world and you've done all these different things, I suppose one of the questions that I really wanted to know is what's kind of one of your happiest and fondest memories of adventure?
So yeah, the wife and I travelled around the world back in the early noughties. I think it's 2001, 2002. That was a great experience, especially when you end up in places like New Zealand, where it's just adrenaline junkie's dream for your bungee jumping and your skydiving and things like that. But I think the best thing I've ever done was on that trip and we went scuba diving in the Barrier Reef in Australia, which is just the most phenomenal thing I'll ever do, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think some stuff like that. I mean, I think the opportunities to see and experience stuff that's a little bit out of the norm, that's different from what everyone else gets. And I think that's something that the Apex Challenge, I think, is really going to deliver, because not all of us are going to be able to get to actual Mount Everest. Not all of us are going to be able to actually ascend the real mountain itself, but to put our bodies through a taste of that physical endurance, to put ourselves through a taste of that mental endurance, to try to touch that kind of feeling and sensation, but in the Lake District, I think is a real kind of buzz and excitement. So with that kind of in mind, if someone was thinking about doing the Apex Challenge and they were thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure if I've got it within me, and they were kind of umming and ahhing a little bit about it, what would you say to that person?
Go and find out. Go and have a go. Have a go. Rock up. Do some training, of course. Rock up. Give it your all. If you make it, amazing. If you don't, hats off to you anyway, because you've had a go and you've stepped out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. Making sure that stepping out of your comfort zone, doing something every day that scares you just that little bit, making sure that you still feel alive. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so I've got two kind of final questions for you, which we're asking everyone's, which is the first one: what does Apex mean to you in one word? If you could sum up the Apex Challenge in one word, what would it be?
Apex Challenge in one word: daunting.
An honest answer. I love it. This is brilliant. Daunting. Why daunting? Is it because do you have that bit of fear that maybe it's going to be too much for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I think that's what drives me on. I'm a stubborn soul, and having done the 3 peaks and finding it a little bit harder than I was expecting, to be quite honest, to just push into that next level.
Okay, and then the final question that we have, which is, what is your Everest?
Can we go back to the kayaking? I mean, what is your Everest? Yeah, I don't know. It probably goes back to the kayaking and just, that fear. And I do need to get over it at some point. So perhaps we're going to go back to Slovenia at some point and do that. And that might just be my Everest.
There we go. Maybe we'll be able to find a nice little town or a nice little lake somewhere when we're up there just beforehand, and we'll take you out for a gentle kayak on a still lake, just to ease you back in. And it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much. It's been wonderful, and all the best for the challenge. And I look forward to meeting you up the mountain as well. So take care, mate, and I'll see you soon. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim. All the best.
Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and for watching that installment. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to that man. And adventure, spirit. You've got to make sure that you absolutely go for it. So please do make sure that you follow along with us on all of our social media accounts. Make sure that if you haven't yet signed up to the Apex Challenge, go onto the website, apexeverest.com. Sign up. There is information there. You can also take part as a team if you wanted to. That's a team of 4. If maybe you feel like it's a bit too much for you. And also, don't forget, you do not have to complete the entire challenge. It might be that you can only manage 1 summit. It might be you make 4 or 5 summits. This is all about setting yourself up. This is all about challenging yourself. This is all about trying to find out what have you got within inside you and how much can you actually achieve and take. So it's been an absolute pleasure, but make sure you like, follow, subscribe, comment, tick all the bell buttons and things to stay tuned for the next episodes and series. There's going to be so much more coming up. Take care and we'll see you in the next one.